The humiliating encounter. The stale air on the 20th floor of Technova Solutions always smelled of ambition and ozone, a blend Marcus Williams, at 19, had come to associate with the churning anxiety in his own gut. He clutched the warm pizza box, the grease seeping slightly through the cardboard, as he waited at the reception desk. This wasn't a world he belonged in. He was just a transient, a means to an end, shuttling lukewarm pies between the sterile, glittering floors of corporate America and the humid, chaotic streets of his own neighborhood. His eyes, however, weren't on the bored blonde receptionist filing her nails behind the desk. They were fixed, almost mesmerized, on the giant screen dominating the lobby, where dozens of engineers, their faces etched with frustration and exhaustion, frantically discussed a flawed algorithm. Lines of code, dense and complex, scrolled endlessly. He heard whispers of millions a day, of a system crashing every 200,000 simultaneous queries. A familiar knot tightened in his chest. He knew that feeling, that slow drain of vital resources, the silent, relentless erosion of a family's stability. "My God," he muttered, almost to himself, his voice barely audible above the low hum of the servers. "They're using the completely wrong data structure." The receptionist, catching his words, rolled her eyes with a dismissive sniff. "Sure, the pizza delivery guy knows advanced programming. What a joke." Her sarcasm hung in the air, thick and cloying, but Marcus barely registered it. His gaze was still locked on the screen, the error as blindingly obvious to him as breathing. A simple reorganization of the binary tree. The implementation of distributed hashing. It would solve everything in a matter of seconds. He felt an unfamiliar surge, a quiet insistence from within that pushed him forward despite the churning in his stomach. "Excuse me," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, addressing a group of executives passing through the lobby, their expensive suits rustling. "That algorithm there. You're using linear search where you should be using hash indexing. That's why it's crashing." The silence that followed was deafening, a sudden, abrupt void in the bustling lobby. 12 men in suits, their faces a mixture of surprise and open contempt, stared at the young black man in a delivery uniform as if he had just spoken in an alien language. Richard Blackstone, the company's CEO, a 50-year-old man with perfectly combed grey hair and eyes that seemed to constantly calculate, broke the quiet with a low, cruel laugh. "Kid," Blackstone sneered, his voice dripping with condescension, "do you have any idea how many PhDs in computer science have been working on this project for the last 6 months? Marcus felt the heat rise in his neck, a familiar flush of indignation. But he held his ground, his voice remarkably steady. "I know you've lost 97 million so far because the system crashes every 200,000 simultaneous queries." Blackstone's laughter died in his throat. The specific number, $97 million, had not been made public. It was an internal figure, a closely guarded secret. Dr. Harrison, the vice president of technology, approached, his suspicion palpable. "And how the hell would you know that?" Marcus took a deep breath. His mother, Rosa Williams, had been cleaning these offices for 15 years, toiling through the silent, abandoned hallways after everyone else had gone home. During the early mornings, while she worked, he did his homework in the empty rooms, the scent of industrial cleaner mingling with the faint smell of stale coffee. He had unintentionally absorbed countless technical conversations, seen documents left on desks, pieces of a complex puzzle he'd silently assembled over the years. But revealing that would only humiliate his mother more, confirming her invisible status in this world. "Just observation," he replied simply, a vague, non-committal answer. Blackstone crossed his arms, a wicked smile forming on his lips, recognizing a chance to exert his power to deliver a public spectacle. "All right, little genius. If you're so smart, prove it. Solve our problem." The challenge echoed through the lobby like a sentence, a public decree. All eyes turned to Marcus, some amused, others clearly expecting an epic humiliation. What none of them knew was that this young pizza delivery boy, standing there in his worn uniform, had been accepted to Stanford at 16, but had turned down the full scholarship to care for his diabetic mother, sacrificing his own dreams for her well-being. Marcus looked at the screen, then at the expectant, almost hungry faces around him. Something flashed in his eyes. Not fear, not panic, but a quiet, almost dangerous determination that made some of those present shift uncomfortably, realizing they might have seriously underestimated the person standing before them. "All right," he said, pulling a battered smartphone from his pocket. The action, so simple, so unexpected, drew another wave of stares. "But when I get this sorted out, I want you all to remember that you judged a book by its cover." Dr. Harrison laughed loudly then, a harsh, brittle sound that echoed through the lobby like breaking glass. "This is going to be better than comedy. Someone call security to film when he falls flat on his face." Marcus watched as a small crowd gathered around the screen. Employees appeared from every floor, whispering and pointing at the pizza delivery guy who had dared to challenge decades of engineering expertise. 15 minutes, Blackstone declared, consulting his gold Rolex, his voice dripping with malice. "If you can't even improve our performance by 10%, I want you out of here and never to come back. And take your mother with you." Marcus's blood ran cold. How did Blackstone know about his mother? "Oh yes," the CEO continued, with a venomous smile, as if reading Marcus's thoughts. "Rosa Williams, our night cleaning lady for the past 15 years. Hard-working woman, but perhaps it's time for mandatory retirement, especially if she finds out she raised a lying son." The humiliation burned in Marcus's chest like acid. His mother had sacrificed everything, nights of sleep, her health, her own dreams, so that he could study, so that he could have a chance. She had worked 3 jobs after his father abandoned them, cleaning offices until the wee hours of the morning while Marcus did his homework in the dark corners of corporate buildings, invisible to the world that now threatened to cast them aside. "Problem, kid?" Blackstone asked, noticing the tension on Marcus's face, the slight tremor in his jaw. "Still want to play programmer?" Marcus took a deep breath, pushing down the burning shame, remembering the words his mother always repeated. "Son, when they try to humiliate you, it's because they're afraid of what you're capable of." "You can start timing me," Marcus said, his voice flat, resolute, as he approached the terminal. The blonde receptionist, Sarah, according to her ID, filmed everything with her cell phone, a gleam of predatory excitement in her eyes. "This is going to go viral," she whispered to a colleague. "Influencer doing a tech challenge." Marcus ignored the comments, the whispers, the cameras. He focused on the screen, on the intricate layers of poorly optimized code, like a house built without a proper foundation. But his trained eyes, forged by nights studying in public libraries and free tutorials on the internet, identified the pattern immediately. As his fingers began to fly across the keyboard, he remembered all the times he had been underestimated. At school, where teachers treated him like just another lost case from the suburbs. At the Stanford exam, where the interviewer questioned whether he really belonged there. Even his own decision to turn down the full scholarship when everyone told him he was wasting his only chance to escape poverty. He was here, now. This was his chance to prove them all wrong. 10 minutes. Blackstone announced, his voice booming across the lobby, clearly expecting to witness an epic failure. Dr. Harrison approached, his earlier amusement giving way to a flicker of genuine curiosity as he watched the code Marcus was writing. His confident expression began to waver. "Wait, that can't be right." In less than 8 minutes, Marcus had completely restructured the data architecture. Where there had been 300 lines of confusing, inefficient code, there were now 47 elegant and remarkably efficient lines. The silence in the room deepened, broken only by the rapid click of Marcus's keys. He moved with a quiet intensity, his focus absolute, the world around him fading into a blur. Each line he wrote was a silent defiance, a precise strike against the condescension that hung heavy in the air. "What did you do?" asked a curly-haired engineer, his voice genuinely curious, leaning forward to get a better look at the screen. "I treated the system like I would treat a family budget," Marcus replied without taking his eyes off the screen, his fingers still dancing across the keyboard. "When you have little, you learn to do a lot. I cut out everything that was superfluous and organized the essentials." Blackstone approached, his smile beginning to fade, replaced by a growing unease. "That's impossible. Our best minds have been working on this project for 6 months." "Maybe the problem wasn't the minds," Marcus said calmly, finally looking up, his gaze steady, direct, "but the perspectives. When you've never had to make $1 last a week, it's hard to understand real efficiency. The tension in the air was palpable. Employees exchanged nervous glances, realizing that something profoundly unexpected was happening. The quiet conviction in Marcus's voice was beginning to chip away at the polished facade of corporate confidence. 5 minutes. Blackstone muttered, but his voice had lost its previous confidence, tinged now with a note of desperation. Marcus finished the last lines of code and stepped away from the terminal. Done. You can test it. Dr. Harrison hesitated for a moment, then, with a strange mix of apprehension and awe, started the simulation. The screen flashed, numbers cascaded down, a whirlwind of data processing at an unimaginable speed, and then, total silence. The system had processed 200,000 simultaneous queries in 3 seconds. 0 crashes. 0 errors. That's not possible, someone whispered in the crowd, the words barely audible. Marcus looked directly at Blackstone, his eyes piercing. 97% improvement in performance. 90% reduction in processing time. The monthly cost of the servers should be cut in half. The lobby was deathly silent. Sarah, the blonde receptionist who had eagerly filmed the humiliation, had stopped, her mouth agape, the phone forgotten in her hand. Even the arrogant Dr. Harrison seemed to have swallowed his tongue. Blackstone clenched his fists, his face red with a mixture of anger and profound humiliation. That was luck. A trick. You copied that from somewhere. Blackstone sputtered, his composure rapidly unraveling. I can do it again from scratch if you want, Marcus offered calmly, his voice unwavering, or explain every line of code to your team. Maybe even give you a few lessons in system optimization. That was when Blackstone made his biggest mistake. Completely losing his composure, he shouted, his voice echoing through the entire company, for everyone to hear. I will not be humiliated by a black pizza delivery boy. Security. Get this bum out of here. The silence that followed was deafening, thicker and heavier than before. Dozens of cell phones, still recording, had captured those raw, venomous words. The racism that Blackstone had disguised for years, hidden beneath layers of corporate polish and privilege, had just exploded into public view. Marcus stood motionless, a barely perceptible, almost serene smile on his lips. He had achieved exactly what he needed to. Not only had he solved the technical problem, providing an undeniable demonstration of his genius, but he had, with those few shouted words, exposed the true, ugly nature of the man who ran that company. Interesting, said Marcus, his voice calm, almost detached, as he picked up his battered backpack. Because under state labor law, racial discrimination in the workplace is a federal crime. And considering that about 20 people filmed this. Each new word that came out of Blackstone's mouth only dug him deeper into the hole of his own destruction, while Marcus stood there with the serene confidence of someone who had just turned a moment of profound humiliation into the first piece of a much more complex game that was only just beginning. Blackstone's words still echoed through Technova when Marcus left the building. 20 minutes later, he found his mother, Rosa Williams, preparing dinner in the small apartment they had shared for 19 years. She looked at her son's face, a face she knew better than her own, and immediately knew something profound had happened. The quiet intensity in his eyes, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands, spoke volumes. Tell me everything, she said, turning off the stove and sitting down at the scratched Formica table, her full attention fixed on him. Marcus recounted every detail, from the moment he first saw the error in the code to Blackstone's racist words being filmed by dozens of people. Rosa listened silently, her eyes filling with tears, a complex mixture of fierce pride and deep, gnawing concern. My son, she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, do you have any idea what you've just done? I've probably made the biggest mistake of my life, Marcus sighed, the adrenaline beginning to drain, leaving behind a familiar weariness. I've exposed you, exposed myself, and now. Now, Rosa interrupted firmly, rising from her chair and walking to the closet, pulling out a dusty showbox, you've shown who you really are. And if this man thinks he can destroy our family after 15 years of me sweating to clean up his mistakes, he doesn't know the Williams family. Inside the showbox were letters, official-looking documents, and crumpled photographs. Marcus looked at the papers with growing surprise. Fraudulent contracts. Printed emails about illegal dismissals. Photographs of executives using drugs in the company bathrooms. His mother, the quiet cleaning lady, had been a silent witness, an unassuming archivist of corporate malfeasance. "Mom, did you collect all this?" he asked, a stunned disbelief in his voice. Rosa smiled sadly, a wisdom etched on her face that only years of invisibility could impart. "When you're invisible, son, people talk and do things as if you don't exist. For 15 years, I saw and heard much more than I should have." It was a devastating realization for Marcus. His mother's silent suffering had inadvertently given them power. The next day, Marcus received an unexpected call. "Hello, is this Marcus Williams? My name is David Chun. I'm an investigative journalist with TechWatch News. I saw the video that went viral yesterday about your interaction with Richard Blackstone." Marcus hesitated. "I'm not sure I want to give interviews." "It's not an interview," David interrupted, his voice calm but insistent. "It's a proposal for collaboration. I've been investigating illegal labor practices at Technova for 2 years. I have inside sources who confirm a systematic pattern of discrimination, but I need more solid evidence." They met at a discreet cafe in the city center. David was a middle-aged man with graying hair and piercing eyes that revealed years of experience exposing corporate corruption. "Marcus, that video was just the tip of the iceberg," David explained, showing him a folder filled with documents. "Blackstone has a history of firing black employees for fabricated reasons, paying women less than men for identical jobs, and using questionable accounting schemes to avoid taxes." Marcus flipped through the documents, recognizing some names of former employees his mother had mentioned over the years, their silent grievances finally given voice. "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked, his resolve hardening. "Inside access. Your mother has worked there for 15 years. You have exceptional technical skills. And now Blackstone has made the mistake of publicly underestimating you. He'll try to cover up the video scandal, but if we can get additional evidence, we can destroy him completely," Marcus finished, a determined gleam appearing in his eyes. Meanwhile, at Technova's offices, Blackstone had called an emergency meeting with his legal and public relations departments. The video had surpassed 200,000 views in less than 24 hours. "I want that kid and his mother out of my sight by the end of the week," he raged, his face contorted with fury. "And I want someone to find a way to invalidate the solution he created. There must be a mistake somewhere." Dr. Harrison, who had remained unusually quiet since the incident, finally spoke up, a careful neutrality in his tone. "Richard, maybe we should consider offering the boy a position. He clearly has talent, and it could help with our public image." "Are you crazy?" Blackstone exploded, slamming his fist on the table. "I'm not going to reward some arrogant kid who humiliated me in public. Find a way to get rid of him, or I'll find people who can." What Blackstone didn't know was that Dr. Harrison had discreetly recorded the entire conversation on his phone. Years of observing the CEO's questionable practices had finally reached a breaking point when he witnessed genuine talent being rejected out of pure prejudice. That night, Harrison called a number David Chun had given Marcus. "I have something you guys will want to hear," he said simply. The alliance was complete. Over the next few days, Marcus was transformed. During the day, he continued to deliver pizzas, maintaining the appearance of normalcy, a silent wolf in sheep's clothing. But at night, he worked tirelessly with David and now Harrison, methodically documenting every irregularity at Technova. They uncovered a frightening pattern: overpriced software development contracts for shell companies, minority employees being systematically passed over for promotions, and a scheme where Blackstone sold insider information about products in development to competitors. "We have enough material to destroy his career and bankrupt the company," David said during one of their nightly meetings at Marcus's apartment, a triumphant glint in his eye. "No," Marcus replied calmly, surprising everyone. "We don't want to destroy the company. There are good people there, honest employees who depend on these jobs. We want something more surgical." Rosa smiled, recognizing the wisdom she had tried to teach her son for years. "The best revenge isn't to stoop to their level," son. It's rising so high that they feel tiny looking up at you. Marcus nodded, a plan beginning to form in his mind, elegant and devastating in its simplicity. Blackstone thinks I'm just an ignorant pizza delivery guy. Let's use that arrogance against him. He turned to David. You said you have contacts on Technova's board of directors. 3 members who are growing increasingly dissatisfied with Blackstone's management. Why? David asked, intrigued. Marcus smiled, a dangerous gleam in his eyes. Because we're going to give them an alternative they never saw coming. Blackstone wants to humiliate me publicly. Perfect. We'll give him exactly that opportunity. As they planned, none of them noticed a shadowy figure watching the apartment from a window in the building next door. Blackstone had hired a private investigator to monitor the Williams family, certain he would find something compromising. What he didn't know was that his own paranoia was about to become the final catalyst for his destruction. Every desperate move he made only provided more evidence for the dossier that was quietly growing against him. Marcus looked at his mother, then at David and Harrison. Are you ready to turn the tables completely? They all nodded. And at that moment, sitting in the humble kitchen where Rosa had raised a genius, a plan was born that would not only transform their lives but redefine what true justice meant in the corporate world. The boy Blackstone had tried to humiliate was about to become his worst nightmare. And the twist would be as elegant as it was devastating. The Technova conference room had never seen a meeting like this. Blackstone had summoned the entire board of directors, the local tech press, and representatives of major investors for what he called a demonstration of leadership and corporate integrity. He strode to the podium, adjusting his Italian tie, a predatory gleam in his eye. Gentlemen, Blackstone declared, his voice resonating with false confidence. I have brought you here today to witness how we deal with problematic employees and attempts to defame our company. At the entrance to the room, Marcus entered calmly, wearing the same simple shirt he had worn that humiliating morning, a stark contrast to the tailored suits surrounding him. Blackstone's smile widened, a thin, cruel slash across his face. Ah, our famous pizza genius has arrived, he announced to the entire room, his voice dripping with condescension. I hope you've recorded this, because today you're going to see a lying kid get completely exposed. Marcus sat down in the chair indicated to him, his eyes calmly surveying the cameras strategically positioned around the room. Perfect, he thought. Just as he had planned. Mr. Williams, Blackstone began, walking theatrically around the table, a showman preparing for his grand finale. You claimed that you improved our system by 97%. Our experts have discovered that this was pure luck, an amateur trick. Dr. Harrison, sitting at the back of the room, exchanged a nervous glance with Marcus. The plan was working exactly as intended. In fact, Blackstone continued, his voice rising, we've discovered that you and your mother are involved in a scheme to steal intellectual property from our company. We have evidence that she photographed confidential documents during her nightly cleanings. A shocked murmur rippled through the room. Marcus remained motionless, but his eyes flashed with an intensity that made some of those present shift uncomfortably in their seats. The accusation, a grotesque distortion of his mother's silent efforts to document injustice, fueled the fire within him. That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Blackstone, Marcus said calmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs. I hope you have proof to back that up. Of course I do. Blackstone shouted, quickly losing his composure, his carefully constructed facade cracking under the pressure. I hired a private investigator who documented everything. Photos of your mother in places she shouldn't have been. The 2 of you meeting with suspicious people. Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. Interesting. And this private investigator, did he follow you as well? Blackstone stopped walking, caught off guard. What do you mean by that? Marcus took a tablet out of his pocket and, with practiced ease, connected it to the room's projection system. The screen flickered to life. Because while your private detective was following me, David Chun from TechWatch News was investigating something much more interesting. The first image that appeared on the screen was a photo of Blackstone leaving an expensive restaurant with a man in a suit. The date showed 3 weeks ago. This is Vladimir Petrov, representative of Tech Corp Russia, Marcus explained to the increasingly silent room. Technova's direct competitor. You were discussing the sale of proprietary algorithms for $12 million. Blackstone's face paled instantly. That's fake. A montage. Marcus clicked again. This time, the screen showed an audio recording. Blackstone's unmistakable voice filled the room, cold and calculating. The machine learning algorithm is worth at least $20 million on the black market. I can deliver the complete source code by the end of the month. That's been taken out of context. Blackstone shouted, but his voice had lost all authority, a desperate, pathetic sound. Context. Marcus smiled for the first time, a slow, knowing smile that chilled Blackstone to the bone. Let's give some more context then. The next sequence of slides showed forged contracts, emails about racially motivated dismissals, and photographs of executives using drugs in the company bathrooms. Exactly the material Rosa had discreetly collected over 15 years. My God, murmured one of the investors, his face aghast. Richard, is this true? But Marcus wasn't finished yet. The screen now showed the complete recording of the original meeting between him and Blackstone, including the racist words that had been conspicuously cut from some of the videos leaked online. And now, said Marcus, his voice growing stronger, filling the room with an undeniable force, the part that really matters. The last presentation showed the actual financial results of implementing Marcus's algorithm. In just 2 weeks, it had saved the company exactly $143 million in operating costs and increased the system's efficiency by 120%. All of that, Marcus said, looking directly at Blackstone, his eyes holding a lifetime of injustice and newfound power, was generated by a solution created by a black pizza delivery kid using knowledge gained while my mother, a dignified woman who worked 15 years at this company, cleaned up the mistakes you left behind. The silence in the room was deafening. Blackstone was visibly shaking, sweat pouring down his forehead. You planned this. You set me up. No, Marcus replied calmly, turning off the projector, the screen going black. You set yourself up. I just documented it. At that moment, David Chun entered the room, accompanied by 2 federal agents. Richard Blackstone, you are under arrest for industrial espionage, racial discrimination in the workplace, and tax fraud. As Blackstone was handcuffed, he shouted desperately, this is persecution. You can't do this to me. I built this company. Marcus stood up, adjusted his simple shirt, and looked at the man who had tried to destroy his family. Mr. Blackstone, the difference between us is simple. You used your position to oppress people. I used my intelligence to protect them. As Blackstone was led away, one of the board members approached Marcus. Mr. Williams, we'd like to discuss a proposal with you. We're in need of a new CEO. Marcus smiled, thinking of his mother, who at that moment was probably preparing dinner in the small apartment that would soon no longer be necessary. I'll consider it, he said, the ghost of a chuckle in his voice, but first I need to deliver a pizza. The room erupted in nervous laughter, but everyone understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The boy Blackstone had tried to humiliate had become the architect of his own destruction, proving that true justice does not come from blind revenge, but from intelligent patience and the courage to expose the truth when the right moment finally arrives. 6 months later, Marcus Williams walked through the halls of Technova, no longer as a pizza delivery boy, but as the youngest CEO in the company's history. At 20 years old, he led a team of 200 employees and oversaw contracts worth billions of dollars annually. The irony was lost on no one. The same lobby where he had been publicly humiliated now displayed his picture on the executive wall, just below the corporate slogan he had created himself, "Excellence has no color, only results." How does it feel to be called Silicon Valley's youngest and most innovative CEO? Asked the Forbes reporter during the interview for the magazine's cover story. Marcus smiled, adjusting his tie, which still felt strange after months of wearing one. Funny, 6 months ago, I was just the black pizza delivery boy. Apparently, the title changes when you save a company from bankruptcy. Technova's transformation had been spectacular. Under Marcus's leadership, the company had not only recovered the $97 million it had lost but tripled its market value. His revolutionary algorithm was being licensed to companies around the world, a testament to the power of overlooked genius. Rosa Williams, now retired with a generous pension that Marcus had insisted on establishing for all of the company's cleaning staff, watched proudly from the front row during her son's Executive of the Year award ceremony. "I never doubted it," she whispered to her friends. "I always knew that boy would fly high. I just didn't know he would fly so high that even I couldn't reach him." Meanwhile, Richard Blackstone had become a complete pariah in the corporate world. After leaving federal prison, where he spent 4 months for industrial espionage and racial discrimination, no technology company would hire him. His former executive colleagues crossed the street to avoid greeting him. His golf club cancelled his membership. His ex-wife had filed for divorce and taken half of his remaining assets, and he now lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, working as a freelance consultant for small businesses that didn't know about his scandalous past. The fall had been as brutal as it was public. Videos of his arrest still circulated on social media, always accompanied by comments about karma and poetic justice. Dr. Harrison, who had become a vice president at Technova, often commented at executive meetings, "I've never seen such a complete turnaround." Marcus turned humiliation into inspiration, and Blackstone turned privilege into prison. During a conference on diversity in the corporate environment, Marcus was asked how he had managed to forgive those who had tried to destroy him. "Forgive?" Marcus chuckled, a hint of steel in his voice. "I didn't forgive him. I just used the energy he gave me more intelligently. Blackstone taught me that the best revenge isn't to bring your enemy down to your level, but to rise so high that he becomes irrelevant." Sarah, the former arrogant receptionist who had mocked him, now worked at a small accounting firm after being fired for inappropriate customer service. Whenever she saw Marcus in the news, she felt a twinge of regret, remembering how she had completely underestimated him. The conference room where it all began was renovated and transformed into the Marcus Williams Innovation Center, a space dedicated to encouraging employees from all backgrounds to share ideas without fear of judgment. On the wall, a gold plaque bore the phrase Marcus repeated during his first speech as CEO, "Genius ignored today is the revolution of tomorrow." Marcus maintained a simple routine. Every Friday night, he still volunteered to deliver pizzas to shelters in the city. "To remember where I came from," he explained. "And so that other young people can see that it doesn't matter where you are today, it matters where you are going." David Chun, the journalist who had helped expose the corruption, wrote a book about the case that became a bestseller. The title, From Delivery Boy to CEO, How Truth Broke Down an Empire of Lies. 2 years after his initial humiliation, Marcus received an invitation to speak at Stanford University, the same university he had turned down to take care of his mother. At the end of the presentation, a student raised his hand. "If you could go back in time, would you change anything?" Marcus thought for a moment, looking at the auditorium filled with inspired young people. "I would change only one thing. I would have delivered that pizza 5 minutes earlier, so I would have had more time to see Blackstone's shocked face when he realized he had underestimated the wrong kid." The audience exploded in laughter and applause. Richard Blackstone tried to destroy a talented young black man but ended up unwittingly building the legend of Marcus Williams. The former CEO learned the hard way that true revenge is not getting even for humiliation. It's achieving such resounding success that your oppressors spend the rest of their lives wondering how they could have been so blind.